Hey guys, and welcome back to 40 Days and 40 Nights of Rain. So, let's just jump right back in. Yo, welcome back, miss! It's raining outside today, too. It's pretty wet, huh? Hey lady, you gonna dry her off? I get it, shut up! Hey, get out of my way! Just afternoon. The two people returned to the inn to eat lunch. The moment they opened the door to the shop, they were greeted with busy voices. Grimacing with an unpleasant face, Yu spontaneously closed the door. Just before him, the same as yesterday, the landlady seized Kyrie with the towel. As she struggled like a puppy, the squirming girl's head was scrubbed vigorously. She suddenly grabbed the towel and, turning her eyes, Kyrie, that's how it is, Kyrie, not Kyrie. What am I thinking? Ugh, Kyrie was left. Just after that, about to return to the room on the second floor, Yu was captured. I made lunch for you. Are you gonna waste it? Grabbing his neck, she dragged him back. Resigned, Yu, caught by the nape of his neck, was taken to the noisy table. As always, a group of sullen men was gathered around a table, drinking and smoking with ill humor. Kyrie sat down in the middle, flushing deep red. Miss, where are you from? Did you just fly in here or something? Uh, that's today. Hey, mistress, bring something hot to drink. This girl's freezing. In in the park. Yeah, well, why? The old woman? Here you go, tin plate. You want jam with your bread? No. Well, have some marmalade then. Yeah, why were you with that old lady? Um, the pigeons. Did someone carry them? Oh, I'm gonna go. Wait up, miss. Hmm? Miss, there's something in your hair. Mind if I get it out? Huh? A breadcrumb? It's bread. First of all, calm down, miss, alright? Expressionless, Yu watched the uproar. In the clamor and confusion, someone stroked Kyrie's head with a rough hand. Her white hair was flattened by the hand. Calm down, soothingly. Kyrie picked up her toast and sat down next to Yu. Chewing in silence beside Yu, she held out a glass of water. Unconsciously he took it, and froze after a few seconds had passed. He took a long, hard look at the cup she'd handed him. It had appeared up until now that the other customers had been facing away. But that instant they immediately began to resume their meals in surprise. As usual, the men surrounding them were loud. In the middle of it all, Kyrie's face was flushed red as she nibbled at her toast. If you eat, it's best if you do it quietly. Well, I don't really know what flavor it is either. With a sigh of effort, the landlady sat down next to Yu. Poking his cheek, she whispered in his ear, "This town is happy again, thanks to you. That child is able to eat." That little girl's stomach was empty, and that's the extent of this inn's That little girl's stomach was empty, and that's the extent of this inn's bad reputation. But this town is not safe. True, but only worry about that. Saying that, the landlady looked into Kyrie's direction. Finally, Kyrie looked down, almost as if she might cry. The men saw this, and they apologized all at once. Kyrie's head was clumsily but kindly stroked. Yu knew. When they brushed Kyrie's hair, a heavy-hearted expression flitted across her face. As if looking at something beloved and dazzling, her eyes narrowed. Her hand trembled a little. Everyone remembered someone through her. Possibly detached from the war, they remembered back to a peaceful time. We're closing, so why don't you leave? That's the best, but hey, what the hell? Sighing with what seemed like a bitter smile, she surveyed the store interior. The city ceiling was dimly lit with a naked light bulb. It was by no means elegant. Without speaking, she looked around with a smile. This is my dead husband's store. Almost childish, isn't it? As she spoke, smiling, the still silent Yu resumed eating. Lunches were finished. Kyrie was blushing deep red. The men continued to clamor. Yu ate in silence, and the landlady watched over everything without a word. He returned to the lonely room and closed the door. He could still hear clamoring voices from downstairs. Uncaring, he sat on the bed and, laying down, closed his eyes. Darkness spread across the backs of his eyelid and he concentrated. His blood vessels showed through his skin, faintly dyed red. The town was bombed and burned to the ground. He dragged his body forward as the tanks rumbled. The color of his blood was on the trigger. The memories flooded back into his mind. Outside the window, the rain relentlessly fell and continued to fall even now. It was as if God was crying. He thought he heard someone's voice. Before he could think about who the owner of the voice was, Yu dropped into sleep. Unaccustomed to the uproar, he was quite tired. He usually didn't sleep, but this time he had a dream. But the endlessly cycling dream did not change. In silence, he pulled at the door and opened it. At his feet was a wide sea of dried black blood. Chunks of meat and brain matter were scattered all over, the unceasing prototype of a head. In the sunlight from the window lay the stabbed corpses of his wife. In the blood-stained room, yellow petals were scattered. He continued to watch the gruesome scene. His face did not change at all. After a while, he mechanically shut the door, and then stood there, exhausted, until he awoke from the dream always. He woke up to the sound of the door opening. Quickly rolling off the bed, he stood up. Unconsciously, his hand sought his gun. At the same time, remembering the miserable scream, he blinked. Before his eyes, Kyrie tumbled through the door. In her hands, for some reason, she held a blanket. Behind her, two men peered in. The men picked up the falling Kyrie, brushing the dust from her clothes. What are you doing, miss? I was told to carry those. Um, I'm sorry, thank you very much. Be careful, miss. By the way, Tin Plate, are you still half asleep? As he woke, the carefree scene unfolded. Heaving a sigh of not understanding, he slowly stretched. Apologizing, Kyrie hugged the blankets close. With a doubtful face, Kyrie answered, as if disconcerted. The landlady. Use the room next to this one. The words spilled out of one of the men. They suddenly moved to the next room. She again had a doubtful look on her face, but somehow, Kyrie answered happily. It's a two-person room, isn't it? The new room was quite spacious. This time there were two beds, and Kyrie set down the blanket she'd been carrying. Though it was a bit stuffy, it was clean inside the room. At once, Kyrie leapt on the bed and peered out the window. Bit by bit, the street lamps began to light the street, and it was blotted out by the gentle rain. The same as lunchtime, there was an uproar after dinner. He felt it and sighed. Suddenly, Kyrie stood and handed the blanket and bag to Yu. Inside was a small jar of jam and a bit of bread. You, son, you look tired, and I know you hate how noisy it is out there in the cafeteria, so I brought this because I thought you might want it. Plus, the landlady told me so. I see. The landlady will be happy. The old Yu-san wouldn't have eaten this. I heard there might be jam in it too, but I didn't get an answer. Kyrie smiled softly. If that was so, he looked back on the previous everyday life. He certainly didn't remember speaking with anyone here before. Not tired in the least, Kyrie looked out the window. Her blue eyes watched the rain dampen the streets. As ever, they looked sad. How much longer is it going to rain? Oh wait, no, whoops, that's not her. How much longer is it going to rain? He murmured in an almost lonely voice. He didn't expect an answer, but still he was crushed by the empty silence. However, Kyrie turned around as though repelled. From her blue eyes a clear drop of water dripped down. Tears? The instant he realized it, Kyrie again faced the window. The relentless sound of the rain stained the silence of the room. Her small shoulders shaking, Kyrie looked out the window for a while. After a bit, she murmured, 40 days, 40 nights. Huh? Kyrie slowly turned around. Her white hair moved smoothly, and tears continued to fall from her eyes. For 40 days and 40 nights, the rain will continue to fall. He didn't understand the significance of her words. Furrowing her brows, she gently smiled, but at the same time, tears spilled down her cheeks. As if she couldn't bear it, her voice shook as she spoke. I'm sorry. She bowed her unchanging face, murmuring over and over that she was sorry, so sorry. She wept for a long time without stopping, and he sat near her as if cuddling. He reached out to gently touch her small head. Like a child, the warmth of her body was transferred. He stroked her smooth hair with one hand as if to comb it. Seeming surprised, Kyrie raised her head, and for some reason even more tears fell. Tears slipped from her tired blue eyes, almost like rain, dampening her cheeks. The memory was still hazy, his distant past. The endlessly weeping child, in this way somehow consoled. The current you would never have smiled at that time. Expressionless, touching it as if it could easily be broken, he continued to stroke Kyrie's head. I'm sorry. I can't. I really, everyone is so kind. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Kyrie kept crying. Beside her, Hugh sat close. He stayed nearby the whole time, feeling as though something unbelievable was happening. When Kyrie finally fell asleep, Yu laid a blanket on her and stood. Collapsing on the other bed, he stared up at the ceiling and spread both hands. A faint warmth was left on his fingertips. Unconsciously, he kept opening and shutting his hands. I see. A single tear fell along with a quiet murmur. The humans who live are so warm. In some empty place, only the voice was left. But, like a moving rusted machine, it was a strange sound. After a little while, Yu looked at the palms of his hands, and then slowly fell asleep. This is the tale of the late night of a certain day. Outside the window, gray clouds indicated rain. After having the same dream as always, Yu woke Kyrie. Shaking her shoulder, he called to her to wake up. Eyelids fluttering, Kyrie peered out through her blue eyes. It seemed somehow difficult. Sorry. Lowering her head in apology, she spoke. For some reason, he thought it was strange. Long ago, he used to wake up screaming in the middle of the night. But now he just slept as if dead. Pressing her lips tightly, Kyrie stood next to the bed, exhausted. Her face he faced her and asked if she wanted to leave that place. Aren't you going to sleep? No, but, well, you're... Don't worry about me, I always dream the same thing. Dream, the bewildered Kyrie murmured. He remembered a strange feeling from the sound of her voice. Thereupon, he realized she had a troubled expression on her face. I don't have dreams. He couldn't think of an answer. If she didn't dream, surely she must sleep deeply every night. Other than that, he couldn't think of any reason she didn't dream. It's getting late, we should probably sleep, he urged her, but she didn't move. You watched her worriedly, as if tightly gripping the hem of the blanket, or as she tightly gripped the hem of the blanket. After he stared at her for a while, you sighed and rolled back the blanket. If that's the case, you should get in bed. After making a surprised face, she quietly crawled under it. Her small body settled snugly under the blanket. Until you had found her, she'd been lost for a long time, and her body had been cold. Her long hair smelled of the cold air and rain. Her body curled up like a kitten, hunched at the end of the bed. She saw and endured the drowsiness until she couldn't keep her eyes open any longer. In the distant past, in this way, she and the child had slept together. Her curled-up body was lulled to sleep. Instinctively, he gazed at her face and heard Kyrie mutter as she was half asleep. Just now, you somehow seem in pain. Somehow you seem sad. This is the tale of the afternoon of a certain day. As always, the sullen old woman sat on the plaza bench, but Kyrie approached her, reaching out one arm as if naturally. In her hand, she held a sack, which was smaller than the one the old woman had. It was the one with pigeons embroidered on the neck, Kyrie's favorite. That day, Kyrie seemed remarkably happy as she scattered the bread. The pigeons hopped, and the old woman's eyes softened as she stared at the girl. Well, is she your child after all? No, that's not true. Then your grandchild. I'm joking. You're not taking this seriously enough. Oh wait, whoops, that was her. Never mind. He couldn't think of an answer to her sudden words. Thereupon the old woman glared at you, making a bored huffing sound from her nose. You've got an honest face, too. You've still got a ways to go. Kyrie was beautiful as she jumped. As she spun round and round, her hair fluttered as she twirled. She was bathed in raindrops as she skipped around on small feet. This is the tale of the evening of a certain day. As they opened the door to the inn, they were met with a cheer. For some reason, one guest had an armful of stuffed toys. The men were so drunk they were red-faced, as if they did it every day. Clamoring as they stood, they handed her a small stuffed bear. Although they said they weren't lacking any daily necessities, it wasn't right to treat them like toys in a shop. Wondering where it came from, he was suddenly thrown into an uproar. What's with that cool face, tin plate? You came here too. That guy went to Martha around the corner to get that. His daughter's got two of them. They sit on display in the window. Forcibly grabbing him by both shoulders, you whispered into the guest's ear. Kyrie accepted the stuffed toy, looking as if she couldn't believe what was said. Looking embarrassed, the red-faced man scratched his nose. Growing more and more flushed, he nervously asked, Miss, how is it? Is it bad or are you happy? Yes, thank you so much, Kirie's face suddenly twisted into a tearful expression. Immediately after, she laughed like a flower, tears running from her eyes. Seeing her crying, the guests at the inn simultaneously became confused. In the middle, Kyrie rubbed the tears away and smiled. I'm very, very happy. I'm sorry. This. Tears continued to spill. Trying to stop them, the customers gathered around Kyrie. As he was pulled roughly by both shoulders, Yu's head was bent in a strange direction. Watching the scene, the landlady laughed. Narrowing her eyes, she watched Yu and Kyrie as she prepared dinner. But I am all out of time for this episode, guys, so if you liked it, please give it a big thumbs up down below. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye!